Welcome to Sumbits, where we decode the PowerSchool development experience. Sumbits is brought to you by MBA. Let's start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of Sumbits. Today, we are joined, as always, by Ryan Cockrum, Eric Steidel, and today our guest, hailing from the great state of Nebraska, very exciting state from what I hear, is Adrian Carlson. Before we get too far into it, as always, well, actually, after the last episode, which we were not drinking, having a little coffee last time, we're back.
No.
Oh, no, you're right. 2 episodes ago. So we are continuing drinking today. I'm still on the whiskey run. Sorry, I got my episodes confused. Today, sipping on a little Eagle Rare. It's a Buffalo Trace product. Unfortunately, this one may be a little hard to get your hands on, but it is a fairly low price, and it's a very, very good bourbon. If you all can get your hands on it, buy it up because it's delicious. What are you guys drinking today, Ryan?
Well, I'm right now. I'm actually finishing an Innocent Gun because I'm a sucker for Innocent Gun. It's my favorite beer, hands down. It's full of scotchy, tasty goodness. But after that one's finished, I grabbed myself a few of the Arrows IPAs from TransCanada Brewing Company. They're a nice, tasty Winnipeg brew, as opposed to the other one that comes all the way from across the sea. And it fits so nicely in my NBA beer cozy.
Very nice, very pretty.
Big fan of that.
Eric, what are you sipping on today?
So you guys, I got to step up my game. I got to get a little more creative. I'm going with one of my staples, the good old Blue Moon here. I don't know why they call it Blue Moon. It's not blue, and it's a Belgian white. But that's what I'm sipping on. You're sophisticated with this fancy bourbon, and then we got the Canadian guy with the fancy beers.
It's
I
because
like
a beer,
those things, but
a beer that bad only occurs once in a blue moon.
Hey.
My fragile ego.
Blue Moon out there, if you're watching, we apologize. If you want to sponsor the podcast, I will be more than happy to drink your beer.
I'll drink a Blue Moon if you send it my way.
Well,
I'm not a fan of citrus notes.
Here's the thing about how sophisticated I am. I do have some scotch in the house.
Ooh.
And I also have a tequila in the house, which I could be enjoying right now, but I was in a beer mood.
Fair.
But the brand of both the scotch and the tequila is Kirkland.
Well,
again, very classy.
I've heard good
Don't
things.
knock the Kirkland brand. They're actually pretty good.
Yes.
Again, Kirkland, if you want to sponsor us, we'll drink all your things.
Yeah.
Adrian, are you joining us in a drink today?
Well, I am actually allergic to beer, so I am classing it up today by having a classic Shirley Temple. No, I'm just messing with you. I actually
Let's talk about fancy.
I went ahead and went all out. I made my favorite drink, a little Moscow Mule here. So
nice. Yeah, he's got the copper mug and everything.
I got a little lime in there too. So, man,
beautiful. You
got to bring it for some bits.
Man, you just put us in our place.
Right?
We're all drinking from cans.
I got the glassy glass, just no copper mug. But hey, everyone, today we are going to talk about demystifying SQL. SQL can be a scary term for a lot of people, and we want to kind of take a little bit of that fear away from you. We really want to show you that you can empower SQL and empower your users to get more data-driven results by using SQL. SQL isn't only just about customizations. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. Before we get too far into it, for our viewers and listeners that don't know Adrian, Adrian, tell us where you're hailing from and your PowerSchool experience.
Yeah, well, I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska, so it's right smack dab in the middle of the United States. And like most of your kind of guests previously, I don't have any formal background in coding or development. I have been a techie since forever. I mean, I built my first computer when I was a freshman in high school. But I actually have, my degree is actually in philosophy, which because after high school, I went to study to be a Catholic priest, actually. So after high school, it's a 8-year program if you go in straight out of high school. So I did my first 4 years and got that philosophy degree, which really isn't useful too many places. But in my summer year at the seminary there, I had an internship at the Diocese of Lincoln Education Technology Office. And at that time, I was just doing kind of computer upgrades, software upgrades, the things schools tend to do during the summer.
Sure.
And so I had an internship there. And then I was intending to go to Maryland to do my next 4 years of studies. I got to Maryland. I lasted till about October and figured out that that was not where I was being called to. And so then all of a sudden, I was back in Lincoln, Nebraska with no job, living with my parents. And, you know, you can't really do too much with a philosophy degree. So I
living the American dream right there.
Right. So I reached out to the Diocese of Lincoln again and just saw the internship was still available. It was, thank goodness. And so I worked there for 2 years while I kind of went back to community college. But then after 2 years, the school information systems specialist position opened up. I applied for it, not thinking that I would get it. And then all of a sudden, here I am. I have a job as a database administrator for our SIS. And I had no clue what I was doing. It was a lot of fake it till you make it, but I learned a lot really fast. Because right after I took the position, Pearson, who owned PowerSchool at the time, said we were on Chancery SMS as our school information system. But Pearson bought them up and said, you have 2 years to get from Chancery SMS to PowerSchool. So that was my first major project, helping our team transition to PowerSchool. So I'm probably one of your more newer PowerSchool users. We made that transition about in 2015. We were about on PowerSchool 8, I think. We just were after database extensions, but before student contacts. So luckily, we did everything with database extensions. It made life kind of, didn't have to know the old custom field way of doing things.
Yeah, your server must be really clean then.
Yeah, it was nice. We didn't have to do any migration, none of that stuff that I hear horror stories about. So, but yeah, so I worked there for several years, and then, but as we transitioned to PowerSchool, I had schools coming to me saying that PowerSchool doesn't do this the same way Chancery did, and so it didn't matter if PowerSchool had a way to do that. I had to make it work the way it used to work. And so I quickly learned customizations. And I think that year I went down to a Kansas PSUG, and Adam Schmarson was there.
Oh boy!
And every episode we are like we're not even.
I was going to do my best. I was going to do my best to not mention he who must not be named, but
he's got to come up in this episode, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so he kind of opened my eyes at that point. You know, PowerSchool had showed me how to get to the CPM and how to customize pages, but no one told me that if you edit a page directly, you're not going to get updates on that page anymore. And like at this point, like I said, I have no coding background. So I'm, you know, the way I'm customizing pages is I'm taking a field from up above and just changing the name tag. Like there was no concept in my head that you had to have different IDs on different fields, nothing like that. So after that PSUG and Adam showing me how to do page fragments, I was like, oh, we need to be doing this way.
I have some work to do.
Yeah. So I went back home and quickly reverted our custom pages back to the PowerSchool, vanilla PowerSchool, and kind of redid things as page fragments. But I mean, as painful as that experience was, I used to hate coding. I fell in love with, you know, all sorts of coding. I fell in love with customizing PowerSchool. And then about probably 3 years ago now, one of the companies that customizes PowerSchool, not MBA, but posted a position on the PSUG forums. And again, I applied thinking, oh yeah, I like customizing PowerSchool. This will be a good job for me. And again, surprisingly, I got the job. That's where I was working with Ryan, and I went into that job with rose-colored glasses. Man, I thought it was going to be the best thing ever. I thought I was going to be, it was going to be PSUG every day. I was going to sit there and learn at the feet of Ryan. Like it was going to be great. And come to learn, like on the first day, like, no, we have clients that have deadlines. Like, you need to know what you're talking about. So again, a lot of trial by fire, picking up skills really fast at that point.
Sure.
Because my job depended on it. So I did that for 2 years, really learned a lot of stuff for customizing PowerSchool. But then again, the Diocese of Lincoln, the guy who replaced me was going back to his former district. And they asked me if I would come back. And I said yes. And so now I'm back again with the Diocese of Lincoln, kind of where I've always been for about a year now, and kind of loving it, doing the help support, dealing with SQL, dealing with customizations full time, and loving it.
So you actually learned from Ryan Cockrum?
Canadian.
Somehow.
Yeah, somehow. And my code still works. That's the funny part.
He's my bad one. Yep.
So really kind of jumping into the topic at hand today, you obviously you had a lot of background in customization, but, as the database administrator, as the PowerSchool admin, it's not all just about customizing PowerSchool and making it look the way that your clients want. Sometimes you just need access to the data. Do you have any like stories or any particular circumstances where you just needed to use SQL to just get some data?
Well, again, when I took on that position, like, I didn't really know squat about SQL.
Okay.
Chancery SMS, we used MS SQL, so Microsoft SQL, but then getting that to transition to Oracle SQL while being the same thing, there was a lot of little intricacies. And
Sure.
for the lot, we did have one guy on our team that was really good at SQL, and I tried for the longest time to just be like, oh yeah, you take care of the SQL stuff, I'll take care of dealing with the users. And long story short, like, eventually, if you're trying to get data out of PowerSchool the most efficient way, SQL is the way to go. And I guess that kind of brings up a good question I had is it pronounced SQL or SQL? Like, I've always heard SQL. Yes. But that's probably because that's the guy who taught me SQL called it SQL. So do you all call it SQL or SQL, or is there a common nomenclature?
Words are hard.
I'm all about calling it SQL, but I mean, I definitely say SQL all the time. I think both are completely acceptable. And I
think it's tomato, often.
No, there's no such thing as tomato.
Well, there's a song
my
about
mother-in-law who says tomato.
If you say tomato, you probably have your pinky in the air while you're saying it.
I do want to get nerdy for one quick second, and I'm going to let Eric take the nerdy role, if you want to get out your pocket protector. But
I can do this. Yes, bring it on.
So, so obviously not everybody that listens to our podcast is a, hardcore developer. Sometimes maybe, they may have just heard of SQL in passing. They may have no idea what it is. What does SQL even stand for, Eric?
Yeah. So, cut me off if I go over 30 minutes on this spiel.
Yeah.
But
you're on the timer.
So okay. First of all, there's so many places to go with this. You said some people aren't really familiar with it, don't know what it is, haven't approached it before. First of all, one of the things that I love most about SQL is that I feel like it's approachable for a novice. I feel like you can sit down with SQL for just an hour even, and all of a sudden, like, the clouds part and you go, wow, why didn't I do this a year ago? You're not going to be a pro after an hour, but it's really accessible. I love teaching SQL at PSUG events because people can sit down and an hour later I can have them writing queries. It's not rocket science. Now, there are a lot of intricacies that needs to be recognized as well. To be really good, it does take time. But SQL, I've always thought it was kind of a misnomer. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. And one thing that I always make sure to stress when I'm teaching SQL to beginners is, despite the fact that SQL stands for Structured Query Language, it's also a language that's used to write data to a database, or to delete records from a database, or update records.
So you're saying because of the word query?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So one thing that I stress to folks when I'm teaching SQL is, you're going to go out on the web, you're going to look things up, there are so many resources to learn SQL. It's not a PowerSchool specific technology or language. But if you're interested in using SQL within the context of PowerSchool, then you want to focus on the querying functions of SQL as opposed to what's called DDL or DML. Those stand for data definition language and data modification language. So you want to focus on retrieving the data. And there are a number of great sites out there. I mean, Google it, man. Go to YouTube, go to W3 Schools. A lot of great places to learn. But that's really what it's all about. And another thing that I think is really important for folks to understand is when you start out, you got to stick with it, right? Because when you start and you learn the basics, I teach 3 different sessions of SQL at PSUGS, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And what I tell folks during the beginning session is like, look, you're going to walk out of this session. If this is the only session you plan on attending out of the 3, don't bother. Because you're going to walk out of here and there's nothing you're going to understand that you couldn't have already done with DDE or list students or some other feature in PowerSchool. And I think we'll get into this more later in the episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when you get past those building blocks into the intermediate level concepts of SQL, it just makes you so much more efficient at what you do if you can understand and use SQL as a PowerSchool administrator.
I think, a lot of our listeners that haven't dove into the world of SQL, especially amidst PowerSchool, they're going to have that question. Like, I have Data Export Manager, I have DDE, I have list students. I'm able to get all of this data out already. Why? What's the reason that I would want to use SQL and have to learn a whole new language? Because it does seem very, very daunting to think about. Really getting into coding, right? Mm-hmm. and development, and that's such a scary thing for a lot of people. And I'm gonna pass it off to Ryan. Why would somebody want to learn SQL when they already have these tools inside of PowerSchool? Because that's really one thing that's missing inside of PowerSchool is there's no real easy way to run SQL. You're going to use a third-party tool, and we can talk about what those options are. But I'm really curious, and I think it's important that we talk about the why. Why would we want to use SQL rather than Data Export Manager or DDE or just like Eric said, even list students?
And Ryan, I want you to answer that question, but I have a perfect example as well when you're done that I want to be sure to talk about that just happened a couple weeks ago. Okay. Someone trying to use DDE. Anywho, please go on.
Well, my answer to why SQL, why would you want to use that when you have those other options, honestly circles back to something that Eric said. It's very approachable as a novice, and I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have thought that if he hadn't said that in the first place. And it resonates with me because with my own background, my own experience, SQL became honestly the first language I mastered, so to speak. Like, I didn't master it as an adept user yet, but that was the one I had a firm grasp on before I had a firm grasp on like object-oriented languages, which are a whole other thing, like JavaScript. And JavaScript was the last thing I kind of mastered. So
you're using the term mastered pretty loosely there, bud.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. No. Hey, you know what? Agreed. I don't think anyone can master JavaScript.
Even Adrian's like, I don't know about all that.
But with SQL, it's I guess it's because it's great to get you as far as even coding, it's great to get you into the whole development world because it is approachable, and the syntax, especially if you're using like SQL Developer, it's pretty helpful with your errors. It's pretty helpful with what's going wrong and what's going right. And there isn't a lot of guesswork because I don't know if that's the point of the word structured and structured query language, but it's structured very well. Yeah. So, there isn't a lot of variation in that. And then when you put it into PowerSchool, again, referencing things Eric said there, you're really just doing this to query. You're really just pulling it out. The only, even where we sit, we're rarely doing anything other than querying the database. I mean, I have things that I do sometimes just to make my development life easier. Absolutely. But no, you don't really need to. That's never part of your actual application. The only time you're writing is using the PowerSchool interface, whether it's the API or you're just, submitting into form data. And then, so I don't know why you use it when you have DDE and list students, is because sometimes it's just easier to get that raw data. It's more efficient. Many times when I was at a district, they just needed, or again, the DDE and they needed a join on different tables. And here we are talking about things that we're going to get a little bit more complex, and I want to touch on these later. But I'll talk about it at the simplest terms. Is you wanted to be able to get data from two different tables, but you can't do that with list students, and you can't do that with DDE. So that's what you have SQL for. You need to get a list of teachers and the rooms they're teaching it at a certain period. So there's about 3 or 4 tables you're going to join there, and that sounds scary. If you don't know what the heck you're talking about, but realistically, you're just looking at these tables, and if you picture them as lists of data in front of you, and you go, here is a list of the teachers' names. Here is a list of the teachers or the sections they teach, and then there is a column here that references the teacher to here. You go, okay, I just join it on here, and now I can get all the sections these teachers teach. And again, I'm oversimplifying. Don't get me wrong. So,
I want to interject with one thing, because I know some of our listeners are saying, no, I can do that with DDE.
Right.
I know there is some capability in DDE if you're exporting from a given table to also get data from a related table.
Right.
There are limitations to that.
Yes.
So for the folks that are going, no, believe me, at the end of the day, SQL is going to be.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned that.
I'm
glad you mentioned that, because I forgot about that completely. Yeah. And
let's talk real quick about the simplest join that exists in DDE is match selection, right? Doesn't that match to the student, correct?
I don't know. It's been so long since I've used. Adrian, I see your eyes kind of going up. I can tell the hamsters running there too.
Yeah, I think you're talking to too many people that have made the transition to SQL now that it's hard for us to look back. And maybe that's a testament to, how good SQL is. I kind of, to reiterate what everyone's been saying, yeah, it's a really easy coding language, but the hard part is, I could see SQL being super beneficial for school administrators, secretaries, but the hard part is getting over the fact that it's a coding language. And some people hear code and they glaze over. And just for an example, at one of our local Nebraska PISA, because I was just asked to do a SQL class, and I was like, okay. I don't know how comfortable I feel about teaching it. I use it, but I was in there with, a really heavy DDE person, quick expert person, and it was just that was the first question, was why? When I can get my data, what's the point of it? But the answer is, I'm very possessive. I like my data. Give me the data. I want it. SQL is going to be the way to most easily be able to reach in and get what you want. Now, it might take a little while to get what you want, but that's the best method.
If you try right, you might just find you get what you need.
Exactly.
One word in particular that Ryan said that I feel like, kind of answers that why is that join piece, right? The ability to join tables and get, data between multiple tables. The title of this episode is Demystifying SQL. So I think it's worth mentioning, for the people that get scared and scared away from even the term join is, a lot of times, and Eric, in your class, what's the first thing you talk about when you start talking about joining tables? Talk about foreign keys and all that jargon. And that, again, like Adrian said, people can start glazing over because of terminology and not really fully understanding what those terms mean. And when you're teaching it, you want to use the right jargon, you want to use the right terminology, but those concepts may be hard for some people to kind of grasp.
I love analogies, and I just had an analogy brainstorm here. So think of your mailman who's walking around with a bag of letters. So his bag is the letters table, and your house is the houses table, and the foreign key is the house number, which exists on your house or the houses table and on the letter. So the mailman running his query in his head looks at the letter and sees 172 and looks up at your house and it says 172. He's just done a join. And now he can put that letter in your mailbox.
I don't like to give Ryan credit, but that's a good way to look at it.
I honestly started with where is he going with this? But
I know, right?
Dang. He actually has the point.
So I think I've brought this instructor up before, a guy that I absolutely love by the name of Anthony Alisay. I've talked about him, right?
Yep.
He does classes on Udemy, and he always stops and he goes, "Big word alert." Yep. He's got this set, like he's talking through, he's teaching something. He goes, and then he'll drop a thing like a big word, and he'll stop. He'll go, "Big word alert," because the idea is exactly what you just said. So many of us tend to glaze over when we hear big words because we don't know what that word means. And sometimes they're really not that complex. They're just new.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
for sure.
So, again, I think stressing the fact that that SQL really is, like, in comparison to something like JavaScript, far more approachable for your average person. And I think most of the folks listening to this podcast already have the concept of a primary key, foreign key relationship. Yeah. They just may never have thought of it in the context of those proper terms of primary key, foreign key relationship.
Right.
Yes.
But they know, everybody knows, right? Well, when I look in the CC table and I see the student ID field, if I want to find what student this is associated with, I'm going to go to the students table. I'm going to find the student with that ID. That's it. That's it.
Yep.
Now, it gets complex in PowerSchool because of some of their naming conventions. But a lot of us also, this isn't about the PowerSchool's naming conventions. A lot of folks listening right now, I think, have already spent enough time with PowerSchool to know some of the quirks, like CC. That table is very poorly named. It actually means section enrollments.
What does that even stand for?
I've heard current courses or current classes, which I still argue is nonsense because it's not just holding current data.
And for the Indiana folk,
course curriculum
who deal with state reporting, there's actually a state report in Indiana called the CC report, which is but it's course completion.
Like something Stephen Colbert would do.
It's course completion, so it's you're pulling data from a lot of different tables, but CC being one of them, but not just CC. Anyway,
so I really want to get this out as soon as possible. I said when you had asked about examples of when you would use SQL, why you would need SQL. Perfect example. If someone's about to tune out and go, wait, I'm not getting any value from this. Let me throw this example out there because it just happened a month ago, and it was for Indiana. So Cobby, you should get this. It's the PEBT report, I think it was called.
Yep.
And so correct me if I get this wrong, but the goal is we have to find students who have had a certain number of attendance records within a given date range.
Very basic. Yeah.
There's your goal. DDE, go.
Yeah, good luck. I'm going to export all of the data and then put it into Excel and then start using my Excel tools.
Right. And I'm an idiot at Excel. I'm not going to lie, because I don't need to use Excel.
Yeah.
And you know what? Funny quick interjection. That's because you never worked for a district and had to implement PowerSchool. Frankly, my strength with SQL or Excel was because I came from a district where I had to transfer SIS from one to another, which means exporting a lot of data into spreadsheets, and getting to know Excel really well so that I can manipulate that data and massage it and then import it into PowerSchool. So that's an interesting thing there to me.
So I know we've got a few people here on the line that are good with Excel, but that task that I just suggested, I don't know. I mean, there was somebody that I work with, and I don't want to name any names, but it was Carla Dance. She was trying to help a school district retrieve this data. And after hours and hours of messing around in SQL, she finally picks up the phone. Messing around in Excel.
Yeah.
She finally picks up the phone and says, Eric, in 20 minutes, I got a query written.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, but you want to know for the month of March instead of the month of February? Click, done, rerun the query with a couple different parameters, as opposed to another export. And I don't know. It was, so there's your perfect example, I think, for people that are sitting there going, well, but why? Sell me on why.
Yeah.
And just to generalize that statement, I know coming from a district and working in a district for so long, so many times you do exactly that. You're either exporting data out of DDE or exporting data out of PowerSchool, no matter how you do it, whether DDE, DDE, or DEM, however, and then you're throwing it in Excel, and then you're trying to get what you need in Excel. That's a lot of middlemen where SQL can get you directly to where you need to be.
So one of the points to extend that just a section further, because we were talking about the power of joining tables, right, and foreign key, primary key relationships, but also one of the powerful things that you can do with SQL is aggregating data, right? Yeah. And my initial schooling, when I went to college, was information systems analysis. And it wasn't necessarily learning programming. The idea was more learning to be a data analyst. But one of the concepts that they talked about was the transformation of data to information, right? Because to me, what you get out of DDE is data.
Yeah.
And when we talk about this concept of these attendance records, I'm getting the data out of DDE, but how do I turn that into information that I can then make decisions based upon?
Yeah.
We do that by aggregating that data in certain ways. And SQL is allowing us to take that data and transform it into information.
And quickly throw in there, I think it helps to also say what Oracle is, and that's a relational database. And that's why all these tables are data when you just export them in DDE, but they become information when you're writing queries, because now you're relating all these data points together and you're actually getting valid information based on those queries that are joining these different tables, relating them together.
Well, without having to put it in Excel and figure it out yourself.
Yes.
So I'm kind of curious, Adrian, you said that for a long time you resisted the pull of the SQLs. And now you've kind of gone down that road. Do you still use spreadsheets in your day-to-day work? Do you?
As in, I take the data out using SQL and put it in a spreadsheet. Yes, but
okay.
Once I've made that conversion, and it was a long, hard-fought conversion, I haven't looked back.
There's a lot of noise from me.
Yeah.
Because now you have information in your spreadsheet instead of just data, right?
Yeah. And once you get over that hump of, yes, this is a coding language, and I guess we keep circling around joins, like joins are scary at first. Like, especially like I keep thinking about anytime you're talking about joins, there's usually someone puts up, the infographic with all the different Venn diagrams of the different types of joins. If you're looking at that, joins. Yeah, the rear outer, the inner, normally people don't just start with, here's your first simple join. It's here's all of them. And you're looking at that and you're like, man, that's intimidating.
Yeah, it is. Because I don't know which one to use.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, you can kind of tell with, okay, this has the half moon of data I want, but, and to be honest, like my first time I was finally really starting to get SQL and, getting it down, then I did a bad join. And instead of hundreds of rows of data, I have thousands of rows and it looks like duplicate records. It's not really, but, all the other data is way down on the other side of the query of the data that's coming out. And you try first time SQL people always try, just try select distinct. That will get rid of all those duplicates, right?
Sometimes works.
It has its place.
Yeah. I mean, it's really masking and covering up the real data or issue with your join. But yeah, that then, that put me off for a couple of months too. It was just like, oh man, I thought I had this. Bad join. Okay. I'm going back to my Excel sheets. But like I said, if you can get over that hump and like, honestly, if you want to take any sort of customization seriously, like SQL is a part of it because you have T-list, if you go down the route of Power Queries, that's all based on SQL and getting the data out.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that I definitely want to touch on is, I had kind of mentioned it earlier, is there is no real native way of doing SQL inside of PowerSchool. Yep. Technically, there is through enterprise reporting.
Apex.
Yep.
Exactly. Technically.
But
yeah, I mean, it's a big. It's not the easiest thing to get to. It's not the easiest thing to use. It definitely works. If you can get in it and use it, it works and it works well. It's a great tool. But there are other tools out there. Some specific ones that I can think of right now is SQL Reports.
Matt Friend,
buddy. Unfortunately, we do have to mention Schmadam Schmarson again because he does have a tool that brings SQL right into PowerSchool. It's SQL Studio or SQL Studio, however you want to say it. It's his product, so I'll let him define what it's actually called. Or SQL Developer, which isn't inside of PowerSchool, but if you are hosting your own PowerSchool server, it's pretty easy to use.
And that's the distinction.
Or if you're hosted, you can get VPN access.
Yep.
A few more hoops to jump through, but they'll work with you on
that. Yeah, exactly. It's the hoops.
Yeah, and honestly, I want to throw this out there. If anybody wants a little more instruction on how to get this done, you can shoot us an email at sumbits@mba-link. We'll be more than happy to help you out to get you started. But yeah, I mean, reach out to
mba-link.com.
Is that not what I said?
You said mba-link. I didn't hear the .com.
.com, sorry. As most email addresses has a .com on.
I'm just saying, people are literal.
But anyway, so those are really great tools to be able to leverage and really play with SQL inside of PowerSchool and really start playing. And again, like when we talked about, it really is a query language. It's just pulling data. You don't have to really worry about breaking anything.
You can't.
Yeah. And
okay, wait, but didn't I just say earlier that structured query language can actually update and delete records?
Wait, you're right, and I'm right, and I should have said that better. There, PowerSchool, and this is all I'm going to say here. PowerSchool will recommend that you access your database using the PS Navigator and the data miner. Is it data miner?
I believe so. Yeah. And that's the safe way to do it. Thank you. Sorry, I wanted to make that point.
Which we endorse and recommend. And that's all we're going to say. And using those accounts, you cannot hurt your database at all.
They're read-only.
They're read-only. Yep. So use those accounts. That's what we'll say. Yeah. So from that point of view, yes, agreeing with Sean, you can't hurt your database at all. You can run queries till the cows come home and read all the information you want. There is nothing you can do to update or damage or destroy your database using the PS Navigator and Data Miner accounts.
And you're talking about the accounts in SQL Developer,
yes.
Whereas SQL Studio and SQL Reports, you're free and clear.
Yes, and I assume both of those, I don't know the background of how they've developed those. I mean, they probably wrap something in a T-list, or maybe use some kind of API call. But either way, yeah, you're safe on those two. Yes.
So again, if it's something you're interested in,
destructive operation,
you should be fairly safe to play around.
The easiest way to find out is to write the command truncate tables students. And if you still have students in your database after that, then you connected with a read-only account.
I'm not sure that's the best advice to be given.
Yeah, maybe not. That's like saying on the old like, Windows computers, go to DOS and write F disk and like
or DELC:.
Yeah. Like, I mean, so speaking as circling all back to here though, like as far as SQL goes, my strengths, and I mean SQL Studio and SQL Reports weren't options when I was learning. And had they been, SQL Reports was in its infancy, I guess, when I was learning. SQL Studio certainly wasn't. However, my district, we hosted our own servers. If we hadn't, both of those would have been invaluable tools for me to get where I needed to go, because it was always about data. It's always about data. If you're a database administrator, or you're the PowerSchool administrator, or you're whatever you are, but you're the boss of PowerSchool in your district, on a weekly basis at least, you're being asked to get something out of that database. And when you don't have the, whether it's a skill set or time, because you can have the skill set, just still not the time to get the data, to create a report, to run this whatever thing in a week, SQL is your least common denominator, your best bet to getting that stuff out of there. And it takes a little bit of practice. And I mean, there's again, like Eric said in the beginning, this is not a PowerSchool specific language. You can learn SQL anywhere. And really, once you get the general concepts of it, then yeah, you can get that information that whoever's calling you up right now needs pretty quickly. And then you pop it into a spreadsheet and then boom, send it over to their way. So, if you're hosted, SQL Studio is awesome just to get the raw data. If you want to have it a little fancier schmancier, SQL Reports, awesome option. Just simplicity.
Yeah, one step further that's nice about SQL Reports is after you write that SQL, after you start getting the data you want, you can publish those reports for other people to run as well. So, I mean, for those armchair developers that are wanting to get into SQL, SQL Reports awesome. I know SQL Studio, I think the paid version, maybe not the free version, will export into SQL Reports as well.
And it'll create Power Queries.
And it will create Power Queries,
which is super awesome, madam. That is fantastic.
But again, it's nice for, in your position to be able to leverage SQL, leverage the power of SQL, and create that report for other people to run. So, maybe your secretaries don't need to learn SQL. You just do.
Exactly. And then rather than coming to you every year or every quarter asking for the same report, and you run in the same report, pop it into either a SQL report or SQL developer, and then let them run it. That's kind of where I'm at now, is just, yeah, we need this every year at this time. Okay, take that little extra time, throw it onto a web page, however, SQL Reports, custom web reports, and then here, you run it from now on.
Yeah.
Yes, so and parameters, right?
Yep.
Because I think you can do this in SQL Reports. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian.
Yep.
Parameters, right? So I can say I need this information. I need log entry information for the month of February. Well, in a few weeks, I'm going to need it for the month of March. And Whereas before you took the time, this is one thing I learned when I was after I went to school for information systems analysis, I realized I wanted to get deeper into development. I went back to school for web development. And this is where one of my instructors said the best developers are lazy. And I know he didn't mean lazy, but we're the guys that go, well, how can I spend 4 hours today? And we talked about this with John Dunleavy, right? The lazy man. How do I spend 4 hours today to save myself an hour a week for the foreseeable future, right? I'm going to put it in a SQL report, and the next time the superintendent comes and says, I need this information, your answer is, get it your damn self.
Yeah, or what if you're not there? Like you're off that day, rather than you having to, because it's a critical report, you have to kind of like Rami said, do it on your iPhone real quick and send them.
Right.
I don't know if that would even work, but they're doing it now rather than you having to take your time to do it.
So SQL Reports is something, I got to be honest, I don't use SQL Reports because most of what I do is developing my own reports from scratch, but it sounds like that's a tool that you use. Are you a SQL Studio guy? What's your primary tool?
Well, I started honestly with enterprise reports because that was PowerSchool's big thing right when I was learning, really diving in and learning SQL. And enterprise reports was good, but a lot of things that PowerSchool kind of does, they're really excited about it for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, it kind of goes away. And so it was like 85% there, and current year you couldn't really do when I was using it. And it was kind of like, oh, I developed all these reports with this in mind, thinking that these basic, functionalities, which now granted they have added in there, were there, but I'm still going in and modifying it year by year or things like that. So I did learn a lot of the enterprise reports, but when we kind of ran into those limitations, we started going to SQL Reports, and now I've used a ton of those. We have a ton of SQL Reports, but now I have a better knowledge set, I guess, and I'm starting to make my own web reports, or even the PSCB reports are great. That's a great resource that we haven't brought up yet either.
Yeah.
Shout out, good.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Because a lot of the times, if you're looking for a report, they probably already have it. Or I've honestly taken some of those like reports as a base and then developed my own basically on that and kind of piggybacked on what some of their stuff has. So
I've always said rule number 1 of customization is don't build it if you can steal it.
Yep.
And rule number 2 is never steal code from a Canadian.
It took a few years.
Just a lot of my quotes stolen from Americans, so just FYI. But one thing I thought was a funny joke that just you made me think of, Adrian, is how you started and enterprise reporting was a thing. The funny joke to me is when I started, ReportWorks was the new thing. That's the end of the joke.
Nice.
But actually, what I am going for though now is so we've spoken about. Really, right now this whole episode, we're trying to talk people into reducing their fear and getting into SQL. But what are the resources that we've used? Because you mentioned obviously PSCB there. There's no what that to me is a resource is being able to gain access to existing SQL, which I totally did in my coming ups and looking at different things and going, oh, coalesce, what's coalesce? What's trim, what's, upper, different functions. And I'm not defining these things. I'm just saying I see things in code and then I go and I Google them. Yeah. But other resources, to me, one of the most important resources when you're starting to figure things out is the data dictionary that you can get through PowerSource or whatever it's called now, Power Community. But that data dictionary
is built into PowerSchool now.
In the PowerSchool now. There you go. So it's just a big long list of every single table in the database that outlines each column, the data types, the definition of what they do, and that's the invaluable resource when you're learning SQL, frankly, because figuring out how to write the general structure of SQL, which is select something from somewhere, and then if you're feeling frisky, where, whatever, that's it. But if you don't know what all these selects,
it helps. The hand motions help.
Yeah, well, but if you don't know what the somethings are,
that's
what the data.
People listening, that if you weren't aware of the data dictionaries being in PowerSchool, if you go in your top right hand corner, hit the question mark, you'll see a link to data dictionaries.
And if you don't know, now you know.
That's right.
Oh, what song is that? That's escaping me right now.
I mean, what other resources do you guys have if you're going to try to learn some SQL?
Now, I will tell you the biggest resource that I used before I worked for MBA, and I hate giving him credit either, but Eric, your customization reference plugin was very, very useful in me learning SQL.
And there are Venn diagrams in there.
There are.
You guys talked about the Venn diagrams. I thought to myself, oh, God, I've got those in my documentation.
You were that guy.
But I also have examples, I think, some examples that really help. Like, to me, there's two things. I get an inner join and I get a left join. If you get those two things.
Read my mind. I was going to say the same thing. It's like if it's not an inner join, 90% of the time it's a left join.
Yep. 99% of the time it's left join. If it's not inner join.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. Yeah. Like
right join. I need your approval, but
I've never found I've never found a valid reason to use a right join, that's for dang sure. But the cross joins, I actually more recently saw a valuable I think it was Forrest. I saw some code Forrest had written, and I was like, holy crap. I can't. It was when when you put a blunt, like a with, and then you join a table with a 1 = 1. He did the cross join, and I realized, there you go. And then you don't have to worry about a 1 = 1.
Adrian, how did you learn?
I hate to admit it, but your plugin as well, the customization plugin, and again, kind of what we're circling around on all the episodes is tribal knowledge, like the PSUG forums.
Huge.
I've done, so going back kind of to the SQL reports or something like that, or even the PSCB reports, like running one of their reports and being like, oh, I really like that, but I wish I could change this here and that would make my life easier. If you have access to CPM, and you can find where that report is located, I've several times looked at that code and then, modified it, or a lot of it is just, again, looking at other people's codes or posting the PSUG forums. I have this problem. It's going to be out there. Like someone's dealt with it too. I'm sorry, your unique little situation probably isn't the first time someone's run into that problem.
Vance Allen has the answer.
Yeah, Vance.
Schmelling. No.
And he'll have it. He'll have it within 3 minutes.
Right?
He'll have it typed out with color coding in 3 minutes. So.
Oh, I love Vance's attention to detail. He knows what he's doing there.
I don't know how he gets his job done. Right? It's like his full-time job description is helping people on PSUG forums.
He loves it. That's all.
I do want to throw out there because, and thank you, by the way. It's so nice to hear that people are using that customization reference.
I never did.
Again, it's a strong goal. No one's talking to you.
I never did.
It's a strong goal that we do not promote MBA products that are for sale during this webcast. That is a free plugin that we offer that's available on our website. So we're not trying to push any sales, but it's out there available for free download. There's reference to JavaScript, SQL, HTML, CSS, Power Queries, API, you name it.
Look at his head getting bigger and bigger.
I know, right?
Well, humility is my best quality.
Well, hey guys, on that note, and I do want to mention one new thing. Unfortunately, none of us are wearing it today. However, Sumbits has swag. Find the link below. Check it out. We are definitely in the works of creating some swag. We got T-shirts, we got stickers, we got sweatshirts. I think we have some socks on there. Check it out if you want to have our faces on your body. Looks like Ryan's getting his sweatshirt put together right now too, or T-shirt. Yeah, it'd be awesome if you guys would support us. No big deal if not, but it's out there if you want it. And any questions, any episode ideas, email us Sumbits at mba-link.com. There you go, Ryan. It's out there for you.
All right.
But hey, guys, unless you got anything else.
Just a thank you to Adrian. Man, it was great having you.
Adrian, much
no problem.
appreciated,
I love it.
Thanks for joining us. Maybe we'll have you on again.
Sure thing.
Perfect.
And next time on an all-new Sumbits, we sit down with...
It's a secret. See you next time, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Enjoy more episodes and learn more at mba-link.com.